So today, we've sat and listened, and I'm sure many of you have been inspired by the amazing talks that you've heard and the people that you've no doubt met. You've had breaks to get up, stretch your legs, go outside, get some fresh air, have a cup of tea, normal stuff. But what if we'd invited you here today, sat you down, given you 1 2-minute talk, and then left you sat there in silence until now? How do you think you'd feel? Probably be asking for a refund, right? Well, that has been the reality for many people living with dementia in care today, and it will be tomorrow and the day after. Because if you live with dementia in a care home, you get on average 2 minutes of meaningful interaction every 6 hours. So living with dementia, which is essentially brain failure, means that normal everyday stuff that we've been doing today becomes really challenging. So making a cup of tea, you might forget to boil the kettle. You might no longer recognize what a tea bag is. Some of the early symptoms of some dementias is lack of initiation. So you might need someone to prompt conversation with you, to guide you through without judgment, so that if your words tend to get jumbled, you don't feel like you've failed. There are currently 800,000 people living with dementia in the UK, and that figure is set to soar to over 2 million by 2051. That means dementia will affect all of us, whether it's directly or indirectly. So back at the end of 2012, I was sat at the kitchen table having a cup of tea with my nan. She was 93 at the time, very sparky, but had short-term memory failure. So I said to her, "How's the day centre going, Nan?" And for the 6th time that hour, she told me all about her new boyfriend, Dave. Now, at a mere 83 years old, she was very proud to tell me that Dave was her toy boy. Very happy she was. They used to sit and hold hands. But then she got a serious look on her face, and she said, "It's lovely to be with people my own age. It's just, there's not much to do." Well, that got my brain whirring. At the time, I was a full-time artist, and I was looking for an excuse to get out of the studio, to be honest. So I thought, what if I go and teach painting? And she thought that was a pretty good idea. So I phoned around a few care homes and found it astonishingly easy to get booked to do art workshops. So I arrived at the doorstep of the first care home, and there was a sign next to the door, and it said the name of the care home, and then the letters EMI. I had no idea what that meant. But I pressed the buzzer, and I got ushered in by a carer. And I stood in the lobby, and she hurried off. And it was assault on my senses. There was the stuffy heat that hit me, the smell that overwhelmed me, and the call bells ringing out. And I waited, and I waited. Nobody came back. So I wandered on through to the lounge. And that's when I saw armchair after armchair of people sat in silence, not doing anything. The TV droning in the background. A lady in uniform caught my eye and she said, could you just go over and set up over there? So off I wandered, started unpacking my paints. And then a lady wandered over and she said to me, "Are you my mother?" And I looked and I thought, she's about 85. Right. So I thought, right, this is not a standard residential care home. And it was later that night that I found out that EMI stands for elderly and mentally infirm, which frankly is as archaic as it sounds, and it suggests that dementia has really been left in the dark ages. So that afternoon, as well as being thrown in at the deep end with people with dementia, I watched well-meaning carers plonking down cups of tea in front of people that weren't even aware they'd been put there. Now, this is not about bashing care homes, and it's certainly not about bashing carers. Indeed, they are the true heroes in this story, because they do some of the hardest jobs in society on the lowest pay. But what I realized was they were struggling to communicate with the people they were looking after. They didn't understand their needs. How much easier and more fulfilling their jobs would be if only they could talk to them. No wonder then that the staff turnover rate in care was running at about 25%. And I later found out that those carers had only ever had 1 hour's dementia training. So I went home that night, and I Googled, and I Googled, and I Googled. I didn't sleep for about 3 days. I wanted to learn everything. Why was it like this? Was this it? Were we all working so hard all our lives to end up living somewhere like this? It occurred to me I could put my dog in kennels, and I'd cause a riot if it didn't get walked at least once a day. But you could put my nan in a care home, and it's entirely possible she would never step outside again. This struck me as wrong. So I knew I had to do something, and that's when I started the wheels in motion to create my social enterprise, Engage and Create. And we have one clear social mission: to transform quality of life for people living with dementia and those that care for them. So for many years, I worked in media in London, big media organisations, TV organisations, advertising. And it was fun, but I didn't really feel like maybe it was the right career for me. My suspicions were confirmed one night when I got an email from my boss at the time. And she said, rather panicked, Rachel, I need you to spend £10,000 by the end of the week, otherwise I'm worried we're not going to get that bit of budget back. Right. What exactly do you want me to spend £10,000 on? Oh, well, just champagne, that'll do. We'll store it. Okay, that's when it hit me. I felt sick. Suddenly, all those charity ads you see on TV flashed before my eyes. How many people's lives we could change if we actually spent that money wisely. I knew it was time for a career change, and at 28 years old, I had a rather premature midlife crisis. So I did what everybody does in a crisis. I went backpacking, and along the way, rediscovered a bit about myself. So I retrained as a Montessori teacher, I rediscovered my passion for painting, and I took up a psychology degree, all of which was really interesting. But every time I did something, I felt, yeah, it's not what I want to do in my life. But that moment in the care home, that's when I knew my purpose. I will say, though, all those wrong turns were really helpful. All of those things I did have come together to fuel what I do today. So take the Montessori training. We learned how we should focus on what people can do, not on what they can't do. We learned about how the environment can help or hinder people when they're doing daily tasks. In advertising, we would never launch a product or service until we'd done a focus group, get the opinions of the people that are going to be using it. And yet here I was, going back time after time to places that seemed to work against the very people they're meant to be helping, let alone asking the opinions of those living and working there as how they want it to be. But I did go back. Day centres, care homes, I was there to teach painting. But in reality, very little painting happened. People wanted to talk. Sometimes I understood, often I didn't. But here was someone sitting, willing to be part of their reality, trying to connect. But what could I use to engage everybody? So I tried lots of different things, and I failed at lots of different things. But after hundreds of hours of asking, observing, listening, I finally had a program that could spark conversation with even those that had communication problems. It wasn't painting, but it was using historic paintings to spark conversations. So by combining artworks and a clear structure of questions, I found I was able to guide people through a conversation. So it was a bit like having a map. So the great thing about art is that there's no right and wrong. We all have a different response to artworks, dementia or no dementia. By looking at a painting in front of us, we can focus on the response, not on something that a lot of people with dementia struggle with, memory. Sure, people often told stories, but if they didn't want to tell stories or they couldn't remember, there was no pressure. They could just tell the story and unpick the story in the painting. It was perfect. People's anxiety levels dropped, and conversation started to flow. I mean, if they'd had a broken leg, I wouldn't have asked them to hop on it, would I? So it seemed perfect to me that here we were, in the moment, It was like a masterclass in mindfulness. So it's like a journey of discovery. Take George, for example. I went to a care home one afternoon, and I saw George, and he was in the reception, and he was trying every single door, trying to get out. He was really distressed. So I invited him to come and sit down with me to explore some art with the group. And he looked a bit hesitant, but then came over. And I put this painting up on the screen. And immediately, George sat up and he said, "Oh, well, I'll tell you what you got there. That cloud of smoke, that's where the steam train's just gone into the station." He was right in one. So he then went on to tell us about his life as a steam train driver in Devon. The carers around had their mouths wide open. They didn't know this about George. They hadn't known anything about his life. And not only that, now his anxiety had dropped and he was being part of a group, having social interaction. Then there was Margaret. Now, Margaret had no words. She'd come and sit and look at the art and smile and nod, but she never said anything. Until I showed her this piece. It was right at the end of a long session, and I said to her, "Margaret, when you look at this painting, how does it make you feel?" And she looked me straight in the eyes and sat up and said, "When I look at that piece, the mood and the colour move right through me." So since we launched Ignite at the end of last year, there have been over 150 sessions done. That's 1,000 interactions, really, with people with dementia, which is great, but you heard the numbers. It's not enough. So I'm determined to start spreading this so that we can have more joyful connections, memory or no memory. And as I said, the true heroes of this story are the carers. So we're going to train these people to be able to facilitate sessions themselves, because it's really important that they can create conversations throughout the day. Last month, we moved my nan into a care home, so I'm more determined than ever to help reshape the way that we deliver care. I don't want her to become another invisible person sat in an armchair. Dementia is challenging. It can feel like it's stripping people of their identities. But what if we could turn that around, even for a few moments? I think we need to get away from this them and us, because you know what? They are us in years to come. Thank you.